Hi, I'm Lisa. At that charity gala, I thought I was raising money for good causes, but instead, my own sister spiked my drink while smiling in my face. For years, she's called me weak, stole my voice inside our family, and painted me as the villain. That night should have ruined me, but seconds later, she collapsed in front of everyone. Why did she fall? And what secret was about to explode in our lives? This hook gives the immediate personal intro, the emotional injustice, and leaves the viewer itching to know the secret behind the twist. Perfect for a 20-second YouTube opener. I showed up alone. The gala was already in full swing by the time I stepped out of the Uber and into the bright wash of lights at the entrance of the historic hall. My dress, a navy blue number I found on clearance, was tasteful, elegant, and just modest enough to blend in. But I still felt like a misplaced pawn on a board full of polished queens. I had never been to this event before, not in person. My late husband handled the social stuff. I just signed the checks, stayed home, and did what I thought a supportive wife should do. After he passed, Marin, my sister, practically shoved the invitation into my hand. "You should come. For you, not for him," she said with that pushy kind of smile that sounds like care, but feels like control. Inside, everyone sparkled. Not just the diamonds, but the people, hugging, laughing, air-kissing. I stood there for a moment, scanning the room. Marin was already at the center of a crowd, commanding attention like a seasoned politician. She waved when she saw me, but it felt like a wave you'd give a stranger you sort of recognized. "Lisa!" she called, voice warm but clipped. Her husband, Everett, gave me a nod. That was it. I tried to blend in, tried to ease into conversations. People brushed past, clinked glasses, dropped compliments like confetti, but none landed near me. A woman with thick pearls and a face I vaguely remembered smiled at Marin, then turned to me. "Are you Marin's assistant?" Marin laughed. Didn't correct her, just laughed. And I stood there, smiling like it didn't sting. Later, I was handed a champagne flute. I almost declined, but Marin nudged my elbow. "It's one toast. Live a little." Her tone was light, but something about the way her eyes lingered unsettled me. I took a sip, slow, while everyone else threw theirs back like it was spring water. A waiter passed, and I saw Marin whisper something to a man I didn't recognize. She looked over at me while she did it, too quickly. Then it started, just a twitch of nausea at first. My chest fluttered, not butterflies, more like bees. My head felt loose, like my skull was a balloon slowly filling with fog. I told myself it was nerves, that I hadn't eaten, that I always hated public events like this. But people were watching me. I tried to steady myself as the host took the mic. Applause, laughter, I couldn't hear half of it. My vision blurred at the edges. My heart, it didn't feel right. Someone bumped me from behind, harder than necessary. I stumbled, caught myself on a chair, no apology, just walked off like I was invisible. "You okay, hun?" A woman next to me whispered. Her tone wasn't kind. It was curious. I muttered something and made my way to the restroom. I needed to sit, breathe, anything. But just as I reached the hallway, a scream cut through the noise behind me. "Marin!" I froze, spun around. People rushed toward the ballroom floor. I moved with them, heart slamming against my ribs. Marin lay crumpled near the buffet table. Her glass lay shattered beside her. Someone was on the phone, others shouting. Everett knelt beside her, yelling her name. "She just dropped," someone said. "She drank first," another voice muttered. "Same tray." Someone looked at me. "Did you two fight recently?" I couldn't answer. My eyes locked on Marin's face. Her perfect face now twisted, pale. But it was my pulse still racing. My breath still short. My head still floating. It should have been me. That thought hit like ice down my back. I moved back, slowly, until I stood alone near the edge of the room. In my hand, the champagne glass was still half full. I raised it slowly, almost without thinking, and sniffed. Bitter, sharp, wrong. Sirens echoed in the distance. The flashing lights weren't here yet, but I could already feel their approach. One of the guests caught my eye. An older man, face I didn't know. He didn't look shocked. He looked knowing. I should have left right then, but I didn't. And that's how it all began. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the ambulance doors closed on Marin and the flashing lights faded into the Boston night, I stayed behind in the cold ballroom, feeling like a leftover thought. No one asked how I felt. No one noticed the way my hands trembled, or how my heart kept skipping beats like it didn't want to keep going. The staff had taken my champagne glass quietly, said they needed it for safety review. Never brought it back. No questions, no follow-up. It disappeared, just like my place in that room. I remember standing there thinking, wasn't anyone curious if I was the one who'd been targeted? By the time I finally dragged myself home, the sun was already creeping through the blinds. I didn't even take off my shoes, just collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling like it had answers. When the phone started buzzing beside me, I thought it might be the hospital, maybe an update on Marin. But it wasn't. It was Nora, my cousin. We weren't close, but she had been at the gala too. "I hope you're okay," she started, her voice strained. "I mean, after what happened with Marin, that was something." I didn't say anything, just waited. She hesitated. "I'm just glad you're all right. There's a lot of talk, you know." "What kind of talk?" I asked, more bluntly than I meant to. Another pause. I could almost hear her debating herself on the other end. "Look," she said finally, "I don't want to stir anything, but someone told me Marin had been warning a few people earlier not to drink from your tray." I sat up straight. "What?" She said something like, "Stick to the main bar, not what Lisa's passing around." I didn't think much of it at the time, thought maybe you'd brought your own stuff or something. But now, I stopped listening for a second. My mind was filling in blanks I hadn't even known were there. The strange looks. The way some people seemed to step back when I passed by. Like they'd already made up their minds before the toast. When the call ended, I went to the kitchen, but I wasn't hungry. Just needed to move. That's when Teresa arrived. She let herself in with her spare key, like she always did, had been with me for years, trusted her more than most blood relatives. "I didn't expect you this early," I said. "I figured you'd need some help cleaning up," she replied, gently placing her coat on the rack. "That dress from last night, want me to have it dry cleaned?" She paused before continuing. "You remember your sister stopped by yesterday morning, right?" I blinked. "No." "She said she just wanted to check on what you were wearing, said it was tradition or something, that you two used to do it as girls." I hadn't remembered that visit. My head was still fogged from everything. "She also looked through your wine rack. Asked about the bottle you were bringing to the gala. Seemed too interested in your things." I stared at her. "Did she touch anything?" She picked up that bottle, smelled it, then put it back, said Lisa always had good taste, and smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. I leaned against the counter, blood draining from my face. "She told me to live a little during the toast," I said. "Now it sounds like she set the whole thing up." I didn't say it out loud, but it was forming in my chest like a lead weight. If it wasn't for that split second, if she hadn't picked the glass for herself, I'd be the one in that hospital bed. I needed answers, so I called the event coordinator. Back when my husband was alive, we made enough donations that a favor here and there wasn't unusual. "I just need access to the ballroom security footage," I told him. "Nothing big, just a look." By the afternoon, I had it pulled up on my laptop. There she was, Marin, walking up to the tray, picking 2 flutes. Her fingers lingered longer than needed. She glanced at her husband, whispered something into his ear. And then she turned, handed me the glass. But before she did, she looked straight into the camera. She smiled, not warm, not friendly, calculated. I replayed that moment over and over again. Each time, my stomach clenched tighter. That wasn't an accident, that was a message. I closed the laptop and sat in silence until the knock on the door jolted me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the curtain. It was my mother. She walked in with that gentle worry some women wear like perfume. "You've been under a lot of pressure, Lisa. Everyone's saying you look tired." I didn't reply. She continued. "I just think maybe it's time you take a little break. A retreat, maybe. Get away from all this noise." "Did Marin send you?" "Sweetheart, no. I just care. We all do. But maybe you're seeing things that aren't really there." There it was. Gaslighting, wrapped in motherly concern. I looked her in the eye. If I'm imagining things, why is everyone so desperate to make me stop asking questions? She stood, clearly rattled, said something about calling me later. When she left, the house fell quiet again. But not for long. Just after dark, I found an envelope pushed under my door. No name. No markings. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. You need to know what really happened. Start here. I looked outside, scanning the sidewalk. No shadows. No movement. I didn't know who sent it. But something told me. It wasn't meant to help Marin. I showed up at the Gala site earlier than anyone would expect on a Sunday. The streets were still waking up, but I was wide awake, wired, sharp, driven. I didn't ask permission. I walked straight past the entry gates and made my way to the back service entrance, the one staff used. My heels echoed through the hallway like gunshots in a church. I found the AV coordinator, Nick, if I remembered right, outside the media room, coffee in one hand, bagel in the other. I need to get inside, I told him. He blinked, stammered something about policy, about confidentiality. I didn't care. I leaned in, calm but firm. I know you keep backups. I'm not leaving until I see them. That was enough. He didn't like it, but he unlocked the door. The media control room buzzed with low hums and blinking lights. Screens lined the walls, cables tangled like vines, and stacks of drives sat idle. I asked for the feeds, ballroom, courtyard, hallway, and he pointed me to the terminals. I sat. The air felt thicker here, like secrets clung to it, and I thought, this is where truth hides. This is where lies are born. I started scrubbing through footage. One feed caught my eye, stage view, time-stamped at 9:42 p.m. Rafferty Pierce was on stage, mic in hand, smile wide but hollow. And now, he said with flair, a special toast, and a very special thank you to the woman who helped pour the night's celebration, Lisa Matheson. The camera panned, right to me. People clapped, uneasy, scattered claps. My own face looked stunned. A spotlight hung over me like judgment. So that was their play. They didn't just set me up privately, they made it public. Live. A room full of donors, influencers, and old money snobs thinking I was behind those glasses. I kept watching. My panic crawled up my throat, but I stayed still. I cross-checked the timestamp against the flash drive video. It lined up. Of course it did. This was orchestrated. I paused the stream, rewound, zoomed in. There, a frame where I reached for a glass, but in the flash drive video, Marin's hand hovered just before mine. The angles were different, too perfect. They'd merged two feeds, made it look like I'd taken the tray, offered the glasses, but I hadn't. A knot of fury twisted in my gut, and fear, and something else, resolve. I whispered to the screen, "You think I'll just disappear?" I copied the altered video, labeled it Tampered Scene 943. Nick noticed. "You can't copy that. That's..." I held up the flash drive. "This is the original. What you've got up there, that's the lie." He squinted at it, then, reluctantly, walked over to the master terminal. A few keystrokes later, the raw footage returned, unfiltered, uncut. Before I could exhale, the door burst open. Rafferty walked in with one of the Gala board members behind him. "This is private access," he barked. "You shouldn't be here." I was invited to this event, remember? I turned slowly in my chair. "You toasted me, Rafferty, or did you forget?" He stiffened. "Security's on the way." I stood. "Let them come. You want me out because I know what this place is hiding." We stared each other down until he broke first, shifting his weight, looking past me. That's when I knew he was afraid. Not of me, of exposure. Back in front of the screens, I steadied my breath. I pulled out my phone, not to call anyone, just to read something I'd saved years ago. Maya Angelou. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. That line hit differently now. This wasn't about just clearing my name, it was about truth. About standing where people like Marin and Rafferty never expected me to stand. Equal, dangerous. I started bundling the clips, raw files, timestamps, the flash drive audio, labeled them all. Truth. One more copy for Thorne, the journalist I trusted. He owed me a favor. It was time to collect. I unplugged the drive, stood up, turned toward the exit. Rafferty was still watching me from the doorway like a man seeing his reflection crack. As I passed him, I didn't flinch. I said nothing. Halfway through the hallway, I heard a different set of footsteps. Measured, confident. I turned. Marin stood in the media room doorway. Her hair was perfect. Her expression, stone, cold, unreadable. She tilted her head. "I see you found it," she said. "Not a question. A challenge. I wonder how far you'll go now." The door clicked shut behind her, and in that second, I knew. That was the first real threat I couldn't ignore. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes wasn't the morning sun, but my phone's screen glowing like a warning flare. Messages, missed calls, news alerts, each one a jab. I sat up and reached for the remote. On TV, my photo was plastered next to Marin's, a headline screaming, "Did Lisa poison her sister?" Rafferty Pierce's voice rolled smooth as honey over the footage of me taking the champagne. "What motive might drive a woman to do this?" he asked his co-host, and they both leaned in like they already knew the answer. A wave of cold fear started to rise inside me. I forced it down. I switched off the TV and stared at the flash drive on my table. That little piece of plastic was the only thing standing between me and ruin. I whispered to myself, "I'm not letting them bury me." My heart steadied. This would be the day I stopped hiding. By noon, a statement went out. Marin's PR team inviting me to a live press conference that evening to explain myself. They dressed it up like an act of courage, but I could read the subtext, a trap. My lawyer texted me, "Don't go." I texted back, "I'm going, my terms." Live, unedited, no filters. I wanted them to know I wasn't afraid. Hours later in the studio, techs rushed around setting cables and lights. Marin sat across the room in a pale suit, leaning close to Rafferty. They laughed softly, glancing my way. She thought she had the final move. I straightened my shoulders and nodded to myself. "Not this time," I murmured. I could feel resolve setting like concrete. The lights snapped on, cameras pointed like rifles. Rafferty smiled at the audience. "Tonight we're joined by the woman at the center of last night's shocking events." Marin sat at my side, her expression a mask of gentle worry. I leaned into the mic. "I'm Lisa Harlow," I said evenly, "and I deserve to be heard." The room went still. Some things can't be shouted down. I slid the flash drive into the laptop, let the footage roll, Marin at the drinks table, her whisper to the man in the tux. Gasps rippled across the room. Reporters pushed forward. My pulse pounded, but I kept my face calm. "I'm not here to accuse anyone," I said. "I'm here to show you the truth." Then Marin's hand trembled. She blinked twice, then her body sagged. She collapsed harder than at the gala, convulsing. A glass tipped off the table and shattered. Reporters shouted, "Call medical!" one cried. "She's seizing!" For a moment I was frozen, torn between going to her and guarding the evidence. My heart twisted. This wasn't what I wanted. Was it the stress I'd caused? Had I pushed her too far? Paramedics swarmed the stage. The cameras kept rolling. Security hustled me out of the studio as rumors bloomed like weeds. "Lisa drove her over the edge," someone whispered. "She's dangerous." Microphones chased me. I kept my chin up. "I never wished harm on anyone. Even she knows that," I said, my voice steady enough for the cameras. Inside, my fear throbbed, but I reminded myself again and again. I didn't kill her. I exposed truth. This was the moment the mask began to slip from their faces. Hours later, alone in my safe room, the adrenaline drained out of me like water. My laptop hummed in the silence. An email sat at the top of my inbox. Subject line, "Check the hospital footage." No sender. I clicked. A short video filled the screen. Hospital staff stood in a hallway, voices low but urgent. "We're told to delay treatment," one said. The camera panned to a staffer walking away in scrubs, embroidered initials glinting on the pocket. M.W. Marin Whitfield. I gasped and leaned closer to the screen, my hands cold. Whatever game was being played hadn't stopped at the gala. It was inside the hospital now. When I walked into the hospital's waiting area, time slowed. Marin was declared unstable again. The room was thick with whispered glances and tension, faces I'd known my whole life now holding suspicion instead of sympathy. A nurse passed, clipped apology, avoiding my eyes, then glanced back. I saw through the act. Through the glass wall, Marin lay still behind a curtain, monitors beeping. In that moment, I felt both powerless and furious. She was staging her collapse like a scene, even here. I pressed my throat. I would get her records, even if I had to pry them from the jaws of that hospital. I approached the nurse's station, my pulse loud in my ears. No polite requests. I demanded her file. I need it for legal counsel, I said. A young nurse, hesitant, slipped me a scanned copy. Liver enzymes elevated. Unknown toxin detected. My heart jammed in my chest. This wasn't fainting. This was stealth poisoning. I snapped photos with my phone. Then, in a blur, I sent them to Thorn Lang. Whoever thought this was a collapse as she said it was wrong. Medical truth would be my new weapon. News vans arrived outside. Media had latched onto the leaked files overnight. Suddenly, I was the accused again, the sister who drove Marin to her knees. Rafferty played side-by-side clips, Marin collapsing, my face stunned. Headlines screamed family feud or murder plot. I ducked into the hall, found a news crew live. I stepped into frame, camera light blinding. I spoke. "You can't frame me without telling the full story." My voice cracked just slightly. The backlash came instantly. Tweets and articles flooded in, each one a dart. Fear surged, but I pushed it aside. Then the doctors wheeled Marin past me, limp, pale as paper. Her life was slipping in real time. The doctor told the gathering crowd she was heading toward organ failure. "We're doing everything we can," he said, voice tired. My mother whispered, "Lisa, say something." I stood, arms stiff, refusing to cry or plea. I turned away. There wasn't time for tears. Truth had to win over spectacle. In the corridor, I found Marin's husband leaning against a wall. His tie was undone, his posture desperate. "You look tired," I said bluntly. He swallowed. "I didn't want it to go this far," he murmured. "She pushed me too far." My mind raced. He was complicit. I pressed harder, voice low. "Tell me what you did." He turned away, shaking. "I can't talk here." His retreat was admission. He was part of it. Back in the waiting room, I sat numb. My phone buzzed. A new video just arrived, grainy footage of someone slipping a folded envelope into the pocket of my coat. Planted evidence. The angle was clandestine, precise. They weren't just building a case, they were rigging it. I stared at that screen until it blurred. They thought I'd panic. I wouldn't. I woke to a different world. Overnight, the media had flooded with raw footage, side-by-side comparisons of Marin's whisper and the altered feed. Every major news site ran headlines like, "Was Lisa framed?" and "The other side of the gala." Calls came in. Old friends, distant cousins, colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years, all asking if I needed help, support, or proof. My name trended. My phone vibrated so much I worried it might explode. I took a breath and let it out slowly. This was the moment the narrative could turn. If truth was light, then I needed everyone to see it. I had to force the spotlight onto the lies. Before noon, I sat at my computer, reviewed the clips again, drafted talking points, evidence, timestamps, medical records. I rehearsed what I would say. This wasn't about vindication. It was about reclaiming my voice. Thorn Lang published an article that afternoon. It showed Marin's manipulation and the falsified narrative side by side. The whisper, "Once she's holding it, I'll handle the rest," played again on loop. News anchors replayed it. Viewers in comment threads shifted. "We believed the wrong sister," one wrote. Rafferty scrambled to spin it. I watched the shift in tone, emotion rising like a tide. Relief mingled with wariness. Who would push back next? That evening, my mother invited me and Marin to meet at Lavinia's house. The room was heavy with forced calm. Lavinia began accusing me of making drama and destroying the family image. I stood. You had the same footage, I said. You could have stopped this, but you chose to weaponize it. Mother's face tightened. Marin shot me a look. You always loved drama more than family, she spat. I squared my shoulders. I loved truth more than hypocrisy. A stunned silence fell. My mother's defenses wavered. People murmured behind her back. Marin's lips twitched as though she wanted to say more, but I held her gaze until she looked away. I laid out the proof: medical records, video clips, staff testimonies, documents I had prepared. I told them I was resigning from the family's foundation. If they wanted a public statement, fine, but on my terms. Lavinia's voice shook. You're throwing away everything we built. She spoke of reputation, social standing, legacy, but I didn't flinch. I am reclaiming what I lost, I said. That includes my dignity. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't argue further. Just when it felt like a victory, the door creaked open. Marin's husband stepped in, suit in disarray. His face was pale. He held a folder. You're being sued for defamation, he said quietly. And that's just the start. Shock froze the room. The stakes shot upward. I looked at them all, mother, sister, husband, and steadied my breath. They had tried to bury me. Instead, they had made me unstoppable. Lights, cameras, the air buzzing with tension. I arrived at the studio just as the crew was making final adjustments. My heart hammered, but I forced myself to walk in steady. Marin sat across from me, her composure cool, lips pressed in a line. Rafferty sat between us, leaned forward. Tonight, he announced to the cameras, is the final reckoning. I gripped my notes. I glanced at the quote I'd pinned in my mind all day. Truth dawns brightest in exposure. I told myself this was my moment. No theatrics, no concessions, just evidence and conviction. When the red light blinked on, I leaned forward. This isn't about fragility, I said clearly. It's about truth. I clicked play on the side-by-side footage. On one side, Marin whispering. On the other, the false narrative they spun. The studio fell silent. I watched as her eyes widened, shock flickering, anger rising. Then I said it. I didn't expose anyone. The lies exposed themselves. The clip looped. The weight in the room shifted. I knew in that moment the narrative had changed. The show cut to commercial, but Marin stayed quiet when asked to comment. A few minutes later, live again, she offered an apology. I regret how things were perceived. I never intended to hurt anyone. Her voice was soft, practiced. She looked off to the side, then back at the camera. Behind the scenes, she motioned to her legal team. The world watched. I responded quietly but firmly. Your reputation demanded it, but your heart didn't choose it. Panelists murmured. The room leaned in. Silence sometimes says more than words. As the broadcast wrapped, a stagehand slid papers onto my lap. I recognized the envelope. Legal documents. Drusilla's team was suing me for defamation. They'd turned the final act into a courtroom play. I held those papers while cameras still rolled. I stood and told the audience, here are medical records, staff testimonies, timestamps. I pressed send on a statement. I watched the suit backfire when independent forensic analysts confirmed my evidence. Headlines flicked overnight. From accused to accuser. Triumph mingled with caution. Later, in the quiet of my apartment, I sat with nothing but memory. I touched the red bracelet, the one she dropped when she collapsed. It was my symbol now. I no longer needed the weight of being the little sister. I vowed, no revenge. I would build something real. I closed my eyes for a moment. I allowed myself that silence. At midnight, a message lit my phone. Watch tonight's Gala replay. It wasn't over yet. I clicked the link. Post-party footage streamed. Marin whispered with a man I didn't recognize, handing him an envelope. The moment froze on screen. My breath caught. One final secret remained. I unlocked the door to my new apartment and stepped inside. The place was modest. Straw-colored walls, hardwood floor, sunlight creeping through sheer curtains. Boxes were stacked in corners. One held my old photographs, another framed letters. This was my first space of my own. I paused in the center of the living room and thought, it wasn't just about leaving the house. It was about leaving the version of me who needed it. I placed a small plant by the window, hung a framed quote about courage. I was shedding old skin. As I pulled open the mail, I saw a crisp envelope, unmarked, handwritten. I set it aside. I wasn't ready yet. That afternoon, I walked into the charity's boardroom, the same board that had hosted the gala I'd been scapegoated around. They sat in polished chairs, waiting. The chairperson stood and offered me a leadership position, community liaison for truth advocacy, bridging victims and systems. My chest tightened. Doubt crept in. Me? A public face. But then I remembered my grandmother's words. The loudest change often comes from the quietest courage. I accepted. Sitting there, I felt no victim, but a survivor taking purpose. My story, once turned against me, was now my strength. A few weeks later, a message pinged my phone late at night. Marin was moving abroad. No press, no fanfare. People whispered that her deals had fallen apart, her influence evaporated. My heart didn't leap or sting. I'd shed that. I read one final text she sent me. You always had it better than me. I just didn't want to admit it. I stared at it, felt a hollow ache, then deleted it. Closure, I reminded myself, is not confrontation. It's a choice. Marin became a chapter, not a chain. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and finally opened the envelope. Inside, a black and white photograph. Marin in a dim hallway, speaking with a man I recognized, Dr. Elias Portman, her longtime sponsor. Tucked behind it, court testimonies confirming he'd bankrolled the sabotage and orchestrated funds to manipulate evidence. No return address. A sticky note. Let light do what revenge cannot. My hands trembled only a moment. I scanned the documents, printed them, and slid them anonymously to the board. I didn't need the spotlight. Let the system do its work. Weeks later, I sat in a corner cafe, journal open in front of me. The barista, a gentle older man, complimented my bracelet, my own design now. It glinted in the afternoon sun. I wrote, "Every betrayal was a push toward truth." I recounted the hardest nights and how they shaped me. My story had value beyond scandal. It could guide others. I sketched an outline for a memoir, not to relive trauma, but to offer proof that surviving doesn't mean fading. At midnight, my phone buzzed again. The subject, adapting your story. An email from a media house wanting me to narrate my own life. I stared at it, heart filling. Finally, I held the pen.